Ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of IFM Talks. I'm excited about today's guest, a powerhouse in facilities management and workplace leadership. Before I give the game away, if you haven't guessed already, check out this lineup. Founder and now vice chair of Pareto FM, a visiting lecturer at Oxford Brookes University, a city close to my heart, international speaker, author, champion of diversity and innovation, a husband, father, and current chair of the IWFM. Yes, it's the one and only Andrew Hulbert. Andrew, what a treat to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much. Everyone's so kind on these introductions that they do. You must have read my LinkedIn very well, as I always say. But I really appreciate the opportunity. Love what you guys are trying to do here. So really happy to support. And I look forward to your challenging but interesting questions. Let's see what we got.
Look, Andrew, I'll be honest with you. Whilst I was going through that intro, I was kicking myself for probably not hanging up my school colors on the background.
Yes, there you go.
But yeah, so we're thrilled to have you here. So let's dive in. Um, so first question on the books is you've been in the FM industry for more than a decade now, and I'm
Mm.
curious. So looking back, what first drew you into the sector, and what's kept you passionate about it all these
Mm.
years?
Well, what drew me to the sector 15 odd years ago is still what drives me today, really. I could see there was a sector that had lots and lots of different service providers that were servicing it. I didn't think they were servicing it particularly well. And when I was in my second year of university, I completed a competitor analysis for a small facilities management business called Rollright. And I could just see there was this sector that was absolutely massive. So we're a £100 billion sector in the UK with 1.2 million people in it. And I just felt that customers weren't receiving the level of service that they should. And I felt that we could improve the way that we treated team members and just the way we delivered services. And you know what? Even 15 years later, I still feel that today to some extent. There are 125,000 different service providers within this sector, which we know from the Office of National Statistics on our IWFM Outlook survey. And I think a lot of them could do better. And so for me, there is a lot of work still to do around improving services to customers, being a better partner in relation to going on green journeys and sustainability and net zero, but also remaining that putting people back at the heart of what we do and understanding that there are some people that are low wage workers within what we work in, within facilities management. And it is critical and respectful that we treat them in a way that they are looked after, they're paid on time, their expenses are paid on time, etc. And we look after people in the right way. And I still think there's more work to do.
That's fantastic. It actually reminds me of our founder's kind of story as well at InfraSpeak. He also came up with InfraSpeak at university. So
Mm,
there-
mm.
there's a great sort of comparison there. Um, so sort of coming back to the present day, in your current role as chair of IWFM, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing FM leaders today, especially in a post-pandemic hybrid working world?
Mm. We're in an interesting time with return to work and what does hybrid mean and how do people interact with the office. I wonder whether organizations have now done everything they can to try and encourage people back. There was lots of additional like pizza nights and having celebrity speakers come in and additional parties and town halls and everything. That seems to have died down a little bit now. And I think you're starting to see sort of a more normal approach to what's happening, which is probably Monday and Friday is relatively quiet. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday tends to be busier. So I think for facilities services, we have to continue to adapt our services to what the sector needs. We have to forget that it used to be 5 days a week, 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. And we need to understand that when we do maintenance, at the time we may do it may change. When we do cleaning regimes, it may change. The amount of people we need on reception and general workplace experience may change. And there may be things like events may now be more prominent. So maybe as part of the workplace team, we're delivering more events for the customers. So for me, it's just about continually adapting. But personally, I think the last couple of years, we've seen organizations really try to encourage people back. And I wonder whether their tolerance level has sort of reached its peak now and they're sort of saying, look, it's time to come back in. As we know, some organizations are mandating people coming back to the office. And even in my, amongst my friendship group, people now are tracked how often they go to the office and how much time they spend there. And facilities just had to adapt around that situation.
Yeah, you're seeing a number of large organizations, even from JP Morgan, sort of like you said, mandating a lot of their people to come in. It's either you come in or you're sort of giving in your notice, right?
That's right.
So
And I think, yeah, this sort of big brother idea of checking how often people come in on their swipe passes is an interesting scenario we've got ourselves into, but that is the reality of it. And of course, people are clever. They give their mate their pass, they scan it in on the way in and they scan it on the way out. And there's much more difficult to track people when you use AI and all that sort of stuff. But that's a different question.
very innovative.
Mm.
On the flip side, where do you see the greatest opportunities for innovation or growth within FM,
Mm.
particularly
Yeah.
amongst SMEs competing with larger providers?
Mm. There's probably two areas. We know from our IWFM Outlook surveys that the strategically important things to customers, the top four of those are to do with sustainability. So decarbonisation, life cycle decarbonisation, utility management, utility spend, etc. So the SMEs need to have a real green focus because that's what customers are looking for. And what I always love about SMEs, having built one myself, is about the adaptability. So when something new comes out or a new innovation comes out, the SMEs have the ability to jump on it and start to deliver it to customers way before the bigger companies can, because there's just too much process that takes to get there. And we're not going to talk at length about AI today, but automation of processes and automations of CAFAM systems and automation of some of the maintenance cycles that we do is another huge opportunity for SMEs. I look at apps like lovable.dev, where you can effectively build a CAFAM system, albeit a very basic one, but there are ways in which you can start to develop stuff in an amazing way that just hasn't been done before. And now you don't need to be a coding expert. You can be a vibe coder, as they call it, and you can start to create some really quite special stuff. So yeah, for me, environment, sustainability, and the ability to harness AI and technology are the two key areas.
Perfect. There's a saying, like the riches are in the niches, and being small and agile definitely helps when you're competing against these behemoths of organizations, right?
Uh,
So
Yeah, it's about flexibility and agility. When I look towards the fashion industry, and fashion became one of the key points in fashion was it used to take 6 to 8 weeks for them to create a new garment to hit a fashion that had recently come out. Now they're talking less than 2 weeks. So you can really, especially with social media blow-ups, you really just need to understand what's important to people and be quick enough to adapt to it so that you can get there first before other people. And like I say, you can look towards other sectors that have done just that.
on the fashion thing, like especially like H&M and Zara,
Mm.
they really led from the front there. But well, we can go on that rabbit
Yeah.
hole
Yes.
forever. Um, uh, I was looking through your LinkedIn, and I know that you recently worked with students from Breda University of Applied
Mm.
Science on their capstone innovation program, and you were sort of exploring what FM could look like in 2050, I believe.
Yep.
What ideas, experience really stood out to you, and what do you think they the direction?
I think for me, if anybody has the opportunity to go and get involved in that capstone project, firstly, I would recommend 100% you speak to Ploon, the leader there, and you get involved because it's an incredible thing to do. You get a load of 21-year-olds in a room and say, money and process is no object. Just go and create these ideas. And it's absolutely amazing what they come up with, from floating tables to teleportation devices to different areas to more naturalistic things. So the one that actually won was a wristband to do with menstruation cycle and supporting women through the menstruation process that they were dealing with on a month-to-month basis, and trying to raise awareness of that issue and providing support to it. So yeah, I like the humanistic factors in all of this. I sort of challenge the students a bit because some of them come up with teleportation devices. And I was like, do you think if we could teleport, we'd ever go to the office? Surely we'd be in the Bahamas, on the beach. We wouldn't be teleporting to the office every day. So sometimes, you have to rein it back a little bit. But if they do ever invent teleportation, I wonder what will happen to the office space. But it's not quite there just yet. but a really worthwhile thing, amazing set of innovation. And what Plume is delivering at Breda University is something special and something that should be studied across Europe in terms of how we can do that in other countries as well.
I absolutely agree. I was even thinking facilities management should possibly become a degree
Mhm.
in a number of universities across the UK because you're seeing a
Yeah.
lot of people stumble into it or they're coming in from the veterans network and it's sort of
Mm.
like create a pathway if you
Yeah.
will. So that would be great.
That is, yeah, 100%. It's something that we're working on as IWFM within the UK to try and enhance that undergraduate scheme that we have for facilities management. But look, I did my master's in facilities management and sustainability at UCL, which is how I got my level 7 in IWFM. So on a higher level, on masters and MBA, there are great opportunities for there, but the UK still has some way to go to get more undergraduates onto these courses. And like I say, when you look towards the Netherlands, they spit out something like 500 undergraduates a year in facilities management, and we are probably less than 20 or 30, that sort of level. So there's a whole way for us to go, as with many other countries in Europe as well.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to hear that you're sort of leading from the front over at IDOF.
Mm.
You previously mentioned sustainability and ESG, like they're no longer optional within FM. They're expected. So how can FM providers move beyond compliance and deliver real measurable impact?
Mm. I'm quite controversial in this area. I've never believed doing ESG was the right thing to do because you wanted to get a defined result out of it. I always felt ESG was the right thing to do because of the stories that you created and the lives that you changed. So for me, I'm a slightly controversial one because what I do see in the sector is people delivering ESG just so they can say that they've hit a target or they've hit a certain metric. And the metrics they use are nonsense, to be honest, on occasions and actually create no social value whatsoever. And I personally find that quite offensive. For me, it's about delivering real change, real initiatives, real stories. And it can be anything, right? It doesn't have to be like super duper over the top. It can be real basic things like give 200 quid to an under 11 girls football team so they can buy a new kit with your logo on it, right? It's some real basic stuff that doesn't cost too much money. Or every year in Pareto, we would do a skydive, where we'd raise, I don't know, 10 to 30,000 a year in fundraising for the skydive charities that we were choosing. And over 10 years, we did 100 skydives in that time. There are amazing things if you just keep adding it on top of each other, as well as making our own honey, planting our own trees, taking plastic out the ocean. There's so many things that you can do, but you just have to do it. And my advice is just start small and actually do some things that are real and don't worry so much about what the metric is at the back because that will come. And actually, from a sales perspective, the stories you can tell are way more valuable than what the stat says. And I think that's particularly powerful.
And it really depends on the leadership having out of the box thinking, like you said, with the whole skydiving.
Mm,
I'm not sure how many people would be thinking from that
mm.
from that point of view. So on Pareto, you scaled Pareto FM, and then you partnered with NVM and later sold it to Pictet. What
Mm.
lessons from that journey did you learn working with private equity within the FM space?
Yeah, for my entrepreneurial friends out there, the one thing you learn about gaining investment for a business is they are going to ask you questions that you don't even know what those questions mean. And they're going to ask you questions of things that you have absolutely no idea where you're going to get that information from. Having met probably 50 private equities in my time and had many steak dinners in Mayfair in relation to that, and having a number of offers across the two different deals that Pareto did, there's a level of scrutiny there that you just cannot expect and you cannot prepare for. So my advice to anybody is if you are growing a business from the very beginning, you need to have your house in order. So your finances, you need to have a great finance system because that will be pulled apart through a process and you need to understand what all that means. Your HR processes, your standard operating procedures, your ESG procedures, your finance. I mean, literally just everything needs to work. And my biggest point is often because I've done a fair bit of M&A now, so I've looked at a number of businesses for future purchase. The most complicated one often is finance. People, when they start growing businesses, they put their wife on the payroll or their husband on the payroll, they start their mobile phones, they get their car through it. Some of that can be really complicated and potentially very difficult in the future. So if you plan to sell the business in the future, just get your ducks in a row as early as you can. Make sure you've got some decent systems in place. And ultimately, you should be building systems from the beginning that would enable you to grow. And with Pareto, we started out as a nothing business in my bedroom, but we immediately put processes in that we knew would get us to 20 million turnover so that we didn't get disrupted as we got bigger. And that was really, really important through that time. So yeah, private equity is an amazing way to grow facilities organizations and to help founders on their journey as well. But it's a lot of detail, as you would expect, for the values that that get bandied around.
I'm curious to hear your opinion on this because a number of people are talking about building a personal brand. Would you also say, it's great to build a personal brand as an entrepreneur, but also build a brand for the business as well because it may not be as profitable when you're trying to sell it. Like you're also selling yourself with the business, especially if you want to move away. Like, what's your take on
Yeah.
it?
That is a really intelligent question. So thank you for asking that. A lot of people don't understand the distinction of what you've just said. So for me personally, I had my personal brand entirely intertwined with the business that I ran. And I was able then to go out and network. Although I was networking as Andrew within the IWFM as a volunteer, I was also Pareto, and I was the founder and the charismatic founder going out and creating all the connections and everything that went with it. So for me, it was a huge commercial benefit to have those two things linked together. The challenge comes in the future. And if you ever want to step down as the founder CEO, which is an important role in most organizations, you need to then really focus on bringing in a brilliant C-suite that is going to take over what you've been doing. And the challenge with bringing in a C-suite from a founder owner and CEO is that they've probably been doing 6 or 7 jobs at the same time because they do everything. And generally founders can be working exceptionally hard, every hour that is available to do so. So for me, if you're ever thinking about you've grown it to a level that you're happy with and you're looking to step down, that's when you need to really focus on hiring a good C-suite that can take over from you. And that isn't a 5-minute job. That may be an 18-month process where you go and find the right people and when they become available. And then, who's going to take you into the future, but also what role you play after that as well, because that can be challenging for founders that all of a sudden they've done everything their own way for 10 years. And then a new CEO comes in, albeit they've chosen them. And then off the back of that, that CEO is then making decisions that the founder then may not agree with. And there are many stories amongst private equity of founders trying to stay on afterwards and not doing particularly well. But for me, I've really enjoyed the team that we've worked with at Pareto, and I continue to enjoy my role that I do now as a non-exec.
Perfect. That was amazing insight. Um, I am curious to get your take. So with Allied Universal acquiring G4S and API Group's acquisition of Chop, as well as Pareto's exit, do you think consolidation within FM will continue to accelerate? And if so, what impact will this mean for smaller organizations as well as clients?
Mm. Again, it's a great question. As everything in financial circles, things go in cycles. There's only so many businesses that can buy each other before you run out of businesses to buy. Even though it's a £100 billion sector, there's 125,000 suppliers within it. That's great, but probably 93% of those suppliers are less than 1 million turnover. So there's only a much smaller pool that you're actually playing with. So I think we're in a cycle at the moment. We're probably towards the top of a cycle because there's been some huge acquisition deals. You look at Servest that have recently been merged with OCS, for example, which was done by private equity, and Dan Dixon, who's done a great job at pulling those two organizations together. So this is massive, massive stuff. Now, look, that's all great, but what it creates is the opportunity for more SMEs to come into the market and try and take some of the smaller stuff that's maybe not being focused on as much as it was before. So for me, it's a great opportunity for SMEs within the sector and those entrepreneurs who feel they can go out and do it better. And actually, so at the top, yes, there may be some big merger and acquisition activity, but often when smaller businesses are purchased and they're rolled up into bigger businesses, they're not quite able to deliver the perfect level of service that they did before because they're in a new process situation. And that's when opportunity is created for SMEs again in the market.
So you've 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 also mentioned talent, going back to Breda, the training and the mentoring. Uh,
Mm,
something that's also a major issue within the industry is attracting and retaining talent. Um, as chair of IWFM, what do you think the industry needs to change to make it more appealing for young professionals and school leavers?
mm. So it's actually something I thought they needed to change about 5 years ago, which they've actively been working on, which is a defined educational route for people coming into the sector. Now, that could be young people, it could be people coming from the military, it could be people coming from any other backgrounds. But now, IWFM, we have the level 2 to level 7 pathway. So that is from apprenticeship all the way up to MSc and MBA level. So, like I said, I did my MSc at UCL to achieve my level 7 and my fellowship of the IWFM. So, for me, I think we are not a structured sector. You don't go to university for 3 to 5 years to come into facilities management. And the last stats I saw is less than 3% of people come from education straight into the facilities sector. So for us, we need to catch people as they come into the sector at various different times in their lives. The one thing I do know is in my operational experience, some of the best people that I've worked with and the most effective operators, they started as admins, help desk admins, receptionists, low-level apprentices and engineers. You don't have to come from a university or educational background to be really successful in facilities management and workplace. You just need to be exceptionally driven, great communication skills, taking the opportunities that come your way. And that is what's unique and unstructured about the FM sector, but that's also what makes it a brilliant level for opportunity for anybody, regardless of background. And that's what I get particularly excited about and why I love the work I do with IWFM. Because even me, I started as just a general person on the Rising FM's special interest group as a volunteer. Over a 15-year period, I worked my way up to chair, and there aren't many sectors where it would be possible to do that.
Absolutely. You recently posted on LinkedIn a fresh faced Andrew Hulbert, and I'm also curious because you've been deeply involved in mentoring through Tomorrow Meets Today, as well as
Mm,
IWFM. I'm
mm.
curious to know, did anyone play a key role in your development moving forward, and how did that person or those individuals shape your own leadership style?
Mm. I'm going to be slightly controversial again here, which is probably not the answer people are going to want to hear. I've never had a mentor myself. And I'm an egotistical entrepreneur that thinks he knows how to do things right, and I always do it my way. Where I've had enormous benefit is by mentoring other people. Now, mentoring, sometimes people think it's a one-way process. So here's Andrew with all his ideas. He's going to mentor a load of young people. And I particularly focused on mentoring young women because I think there's a level of support that is needed. And I'm a nice guy that's great to talk to, and I'm not going to, do anything untoward, which sometimes happens within mentoring. So for me, I wanted to speak to as many people as I could. And a lot of people, like I say, they think it's just a one-way thing. They're the only one that's going to get something out of it, but absolutely not true. I want to know what are people worried about, what are their opportunities, what are the things that are keeping them up at night, where do they see the sector is going? And I learned just as much from my mentees as I did from anybody within the sector. I must just shout out one person though. When I was at Rollright in my early career, I worked under a man called Peter Excel. Now, Peter Excel is a legend in the game of facilities management, albeit a little bit older, and I think retired now. Peter Excel was one of the first people that was writing the SFG 20 specification. He was part of the writing squad that created it. And I was incredibly fortunate at Rollright to work within Peter's team. And he was a very active promoter of mine. And anytime I went for an award, he'd write me a wonderful message. And he really helped me understand what SFG 20 was and the ability of it. And when I started Pareto, I actually used SFG 20 as the foundation of all of our maintenance regimes and the CAFAM system that we were creating and everything, and the risk assessments and everything that went with it. So I always must say thank you to Peter, because without him, I wouldn't have had that technical understanding. And look, I'm just a generalist business person, so I had no technical skill set myself. But my ability to understand SFG 20 was exceptionally strong, and Peter was the one that taught me that.
Well, shout out to Peter, and I think Andrew, you're a bit too harsh on yourself. I think you're a great guy.
Thank you. It's all for the camera.
Uh, all right, Andrew. And those new to the show, we're moving to the part which we call chairs or not. So this is how it works. I throw a few quick-fire topics at Andrew, which could be trends in FM or something completely random. If he's on board with it, he says cheers. If not, it's a polite not. It's gut reactions and a sprinkle of reasoning. This is our way to wrap up things with some laughs and a few unexpected insights. So, Andrew, are you prepared?
I am. I even have a glass here. Look, one I made earlier. There you go.
Perfect. Okay, so the first one is AI will reshape the FM industry more than any other factor in the next 20 years. Cheers or not?
Not. And
Okay.
the reason I say not, AI is here to adapt how we do things and make it more efficient for how we do things and find trends that none of us can sit and look at a BMS and find. But facilities management will never, ever move away from the human and emotional factor that it takes to run an office space or a hospital or a school or a set of housing or whatever it is. Most of when an engineer in particular goes to complete a reactive task above someone's desk, it's not about the fact that they need to clean a filter or change a belt or whatever. It's how they interact with that person as to, hey, what's the problem? Really sorry to disturb you. I'm going to go and do this. This is what I've done to fix it. I hope that's better for you now. That human interaction is worth significantly more than an automated language system. So I think, yes, AI will be here to change it, but I don't think it's ever going to rule out the humanistic element of what we do. What I would say is more pressing is the sustainability, net zero, decarbonisation goals. That will be forced upon the sector because it will be legislation, and there will be organisations in 2050 scrabbling around thinking how on earth are they going to get down to net zero by that time, and that's going to be a real challenge. So for me, that's much more important.
Okay. I would have to say I agree with you on that one. So next one is SMEs are better positioned than large providers to innovate facilities management. Cheers or not?
That's a cheers on that one, 100%. As we talked about earlier on, SMEs are the ones that can adapt quickly, and they're the ones that can see trends and they can implement them. They're the ones that have the closest relationships with their customers and are able to meet their needs the best. And there's no secret, as you grow any organization in any sector, you get slightly further away from your customers, and that's a challenge of growth. And we all understand that.
Yeah.
If you're a below 5 million turnover SME that's delivering engineering services in the sector, I think you are ripe for innovation. And I think you should be really trying to just go out there and do some wacky stuff that other people haven't done yet to try and create noise and stories and case studies that your competitors who are much larger than you just can't do. And by the way, let's just keep scale to a point here. Pareto's a 70 million turnover business now, right? The people we compete against are 300 times our size. So even as a medium organization, we are absolutely tiny compared to some of the big boys that are out there. And the companies that are turning over less than 5 million, they are minuscule compared to the large organizations out there. But it doesn't mean they're not mighty in terms of they're strong and they're powerful and they can do it.
Absolutely. And some people might even say they know the current CEO of Pareto and yourself better than they know the actual executive teams of these bigger organizations.
May well be the case. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And another one, well-being will become just as important as energy efficiency within FM strategies. Cheers or not?
I'm going to say not on that one, because as I said at the top, I think sustainability will be the driver in the future. However, I want to backtrack a little bit. Well-being in the future will continue to be one of the most important aspects for people management, productivity, delivery of everything within your organization. So well-being is a close second or third behind AI and sustainability, and it has to absolutely be focused on. It's only because I'm so passionate that I think sustainability will be driven by legislation, whereas well-being won't be driven by legislation. Well-being will be driven by the right thing to do. And the one thing we still understand in capitalist society is that people will do what they have to do from a regulation and money perspective and won't necessarily do the nice things. So I still think you can create fantastic competitive advantage from focusing on well-being. And I think for the customers within the sector, the well-being of their staff will continue to grow, and facilities has a really important job to play within that in terms of creating the right environments for well-being to thrive. But yes, for the time being, I think sustainability will trump it for now.
Perfect. Private equity investment as opposed to just self-funded is good for long-term health within the FM sector. Cheers or not?
I'm going to say cheers to that one, as I probably would do. When I was running Pareto before we had private equity, we got to maybe 18 million turnover or so, 20 million turnover before we had our first investment. We were so scared of investing and putting money into things that may or may not work out. We were trying to protect every pound that we had. We were sat on millions of cash that we just never invested because we were petrified one day of not having enough cash, even though in reality we had an enormous amount for what we needed. As soon as we went into the world of private equity, they teach you that investing ahead is the way to move forward in any organization. So when we invested after our first round with MVM, we put £1 million into overheads, which was a huge commitment for Pareto to do. But that enabled us to grow from roughly 18 million turnover to 45 million turnover in 2.5 years. And we went through this huge growth curve in a very short period of time. And that was really important to us. But you know what? Without the private equity focus on growth, we would never have taken that risk of investing into the overhead to create growth in the future. But it worked particularly well for us.
Yeah, fantastic. Here's another one. FM leader, or every FM leader should mentor the next generation instead of being an executive sponsor or an executive aligned to an initiative internally. Cheers or not?
Yeah, cheers to that. As I mentioned, I've probably mentored close to 100 people now in my time. It is something that I've dedicated a lot of time and resource to. And as I said, the reverse aspect of it, I learn so much from the people that I'm mentoring, and it helps me keep my finger on the pulse of what's actually happening within the sector, from either young people or people from different backgrounds and things, so I can understand exactly what's happening. I personally think you learn a lot, and also you can foster relationships with people that may come back to be very beneficial to you in the future, whether they could be an employee or whether they could be someone you sell to. But because you meet in a very organic way, it was one of those where I would absolutely spend more time mentoring. And now I do a lot more entrepreneurial mentoring for people who are starting businesses and trying to raise funding. You'd be surprised in the last week how often people ask me for investment. I'm not open for investment at the moment, but that's often what happens now in mentoring relationships.
Would you call that a mentoring relationship, or?
Well, I mean, it starts as a mentoring relationship, but men always want something else at the end. So it's they always want money. They always want money. So there you go.
Okay, the next one. Facilities professionals should be in communities with like-minded individuals. Cheers or not?
Yeah, cheers for sure. The beauty of the facilities and workplace sector is that we're across a broad range of absolutely everything. And if you're interested in railways, you can go and do it. If you're interested in universities or Heritage England or sustainability or normal offices or fun offices, there is something that everybody can get involved in. So for me, the facilities sector just offers just an amazing opportunity for people who have similar interests to work together. And that's also what I love about FM. Some of the best people I know who've been doing it for 30 years within the sector, they've had so many different roles. Maybe they were an operator, then they went into sales, then they became director of energy, and then they're working on workplace strategy. There's just so much that you can do within the sector. And I don't think you can ever get bored, because if you don't like a certain area, you can pivot to something else. And I think that's incredibly powerful.
Okay, Andrew, you can breathe. The fun's
Okay.
over.
Okay.
Do you have any last words before we close the curtains?
No, I think, look, I am somebody who actively chose this sector after going to university and seeing the opportunities that I could see within facilities management and workplace. I'm incredibly proud of the journey I've been on with Pareto, but also with the IWFM. it's a great privilege to me to be the chair of the IWFM, and I take my responsibilities very seriously. So I'm really, I'm here for a couple of years as chair. I'm really keen to immerse myself in what facilities management means today. And there'll be a number of opportunities for our members to engage, and I'll be at various events and things as part of my immersive view of what being a chair should be within the sector. But I'm incredibly proud of it, and I wouldn't change a single thing of the journey that I've been on. Not to say it hasn't been difficult, because it certainly has, and I have worked every hour that I possibly could for 10 years to make it a success. Unfortunately for me, it worked out. But FM just provides such an incredible low barrier to entry sector for entrepreneurs that want to try and get something off the ground. And ultimately is a brilliant, huge sector with thousands of companies in it and millions of people that will create great opportunities for anybody that wants to come into this sector. And that's why I do it, and that's why I volunteer as chair of IWFM. I'm incredibly proud of that. And thank you for the opportunity to discuss today as well, of course.
No worries at all. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. So, all right, folks, that's a wrap. Andrew's been brilliant as always. I've been Omari, and you, my dear listener, are the real legend. So join the IFM community, hit follow on LinkedIn at IFM Inside Facilities Management. And while you're clicking around, give InfoSpeak some love, give Andrew a follow, send me a connection request. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.